Hello and welcome to the No Balls Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick McDonald, with me, co-host Finn McDonald. Today we are previewing the MLB Offseason. Particularly, we're giving our predictions. Seems like that's basically all we're doing with MLB right now, but I promise there will be more stuff coming forward. But it's MLB Offseason time. This should be a pretty interesting time in the MLB season. It'll really give us a good idea of what teams are going to be competitive next season, primarily because teams who spend in the offseason are going to be very competitive in the following season. So basically, to start, which big free agent should we start with, Finn?
Juan Soto.
Yeah, let's start with Juan Soto. Get it out the way. Latest news on him: there's a Boone meeting. The Yankees invited Aaron Boone to the meeting. Either way, the primary suitors for Soto: New York, the Dodgers, the Giants, Toronto, Philadelphia. Have you seen any other teams in there?
I've seen San Diego in there. I don't think he'll go there, though.
I've seen a little bit of Washington, going back to Washington as well. Primarily, though, I feel like it's the Mets and the Yankees, with the off chance that he goes somewhere else, is how I've gauged it so far in the offseason. Juan Soto, if we're talking about his expected value on a contract, it's going to be pushing towards Ohtani numbers. And that might sound crazy at first, but Finn, when is the last time we've had a premier free agent hit the market under the age of 27 years old?
Position players? My answer is a very long time.
Bryce Harper?
Bryce Harper. Well, if you consider Shohei Ohtani, that's international, to be a free agent?
True, but Ohtani couldn't get paid a real contract. He had to go through arbitration. Juan Soto, is on the open market. He's better than Bryce Harper was when Bryce Harper hit the free agent market. Right, that's pretty much undeniable. He's the youngest player that has been this good on the free agent market basically ever, it feels like. Machado and Harper are the two examples that people will point to of 26, 27-year-olds. But those guys signed, long deals with very high, but not super high average annual values. I think right now we're going to get, with Juan Soto, a deal that maybe matches the high-end average annual value contracts, and it's going to push towards 13, 14 seasons. Probably close to 650 over 13, 14 years, if I had to guess, is where he's going to go. For that reason, the big market teams are the only ones who can really get Juan Soto. Where do we feel like, if you were to drop a prediction right now, where do you think Juan Soto is going to end up?
I feel like the Mets, because I feel like if Cole has to put up 700, he'll put up 700.
I agree. And this is us as Mets fans, honestly not even super stoked to get Juan Soto, right? I feel like our conversations about this upcoming offseason have always been, how should we spend this money outside of getting Juan Soto? But if we were to get Juan Soto, I wouldn't be mad, right? We're getting a big time player. We would still have some other money to spend. It's just not as much, because he's probably going to get $50 million at least for next season. This will probably end up being the second highest contract in Major League history, if I had to guess. And I would say my order goes Mets at 40%, Yankees at 35%, Dodgers at like 5%, right? Then the Phillies, I think, would probably be next. Toronto, I think, could be very involved. Um, I've seen the Tampa Bay. I saw that Tampa Bay checked in on him. I don't think Tampa Bay is going to be in the Juan Soto sweepstakes, but um, either way, I think the Juan Soto is going to be in New York, whether that's the Mets or the Yankees. It's yet to be seen, and you clearly feel very similarly.
Yeah, I do. I also feel like with the race thing, they would actually have to hand him a check for $1 billion for him to go there. And I don't see Tampa Bay handing out a check for $1 billion.
I don't either. All right. Next team, or next player. This is, I think, one of the more interesting free agency cases in a while. You had mentioned Ohtani a second ago. I think this is the very similar free agency case compared to Ohtani's first free agency where he went to the Angels. We have Roki Sasaki. He's going to be coming over from MPB. Finn, I had mentioned to you that he will be the most valuable asset in Major League Baseball at some point in his time with whatever team he signs with. For fans who don't know how good Roki Sasaki is, if I had to compare him to anybody right away at the age of 23, his stuff profile is very similar to like a Hunter Green. I think there's a little bit of reliever risk somehow with a guy like him because he really only has 2 pitches. So there's some Spencer Strider to his game. But this guy throws, his velocity was down this past year, but approaching 100 miles per hour. He's had a couple of injury concerns too, but he's 23 years old and he's awesome. How do we feel about Roki Sasaki, Finn?
I feel like his floor, at the worst case, would be a premier closer.
I agree. I feel there's
and
no way
to premier closers.
Yeah, there's no way to me that his 100-mile-per-hour fastball and his ridiculous splitter is not a top tier closer. Like it's literally Yohan Duran. Like that's what his floor feels like to me. And I feel like he has better command of the strike zone than a Yohan Duran does. Sasaki will be amazing, and even if he becomes the closer for your team, you're not going to allocate a ton of money to him because he's going to make league minimum for 3 seasons. So, Roki Sasaki, where do we think this guy's going to end up, Finn?
Dodgers.
Unfortunately, I agree. Before I was very split on Dodgers and elsewhere, right? 50% Dodgers, 50% elsewhere. Once you look a little bit deeper into his slider pitch data, you're like, oh my God, the Dodgers are going to be the team that pitches, hey, we can fix your slider, and you'll become an elite 3-pitch pitcher in the major leagues. That's why I feel like the Dodgers are going to be the right fit for him because they've had so much luck developing all types of sliders, right? You look at certain teams like Tampa Bay has had a lot of success with sweepers. Some teams have had more success with hard sliders. Detroit, for instance, has had a lot of success with hard sliders. I feel like regardless of whichever path they go with Sasaki, they'll be able to pitch to him that they can fix his slider and make him an elite starting pitcher. So I feel like he just goes to the Dodgers with that on top of the chance to win championships, being with Ohtani and Yamamoto. If I were to pick another team, or if you were to pick another team, who would you pick for Sasaki?
Probably the Padres because of Yu Darvish. I've heard he looks up to Yu Darvish.
Yeah, more so than Ohtani and Yamamoto, because those guys, like Yamamoto just came over. Otani wasn't necessarily, like, Otani is more of a peer to Sasaki than Darvish is. Darvish is a good bit older, so yeah. I feel like if I were to pick another team, it would probably be San Diego. But I feel like he's probably just going to end up on the Dodgers.
I very well hope not, though.
I hope not as
That
well.
team does not even get any better.
Yeah, that's. I hope not. All right, let's get forward to some of the other pitchers, Finn. Can I throw out a dark horse for Roki first?
Yeah.
A lot of his fastball, concerns, that a lot of people have are kind of what the Chicago Cubs look for, in fastballs. They like a little more cut on fastballs than a lot of organizations do. So I feel like for me, like the Cubs could also be a big buyer for Roki Sasaki. I feel like they would at least have one of the higher demands for his current pitch profile. So that being said, those are my three Roki names. Let's move forward. To
I very well might have had the Cubs if it was him being able to actually seek money.
yeah, because I feel like they would pay for him a lot more. I agree. All right, Finn. Let's go to a group of 4 starting pitchers. Okay, Corbin Burns, Blake Snell, Walker Buehler, Shane Bieber. Right, these are all guys who have peaked at Cy Young caliber pitchers. I believe all of those guys except Buehler have won a Cy Young. What teams do we see targeting these 4 guys?
Big spenders that need starting pitching.
I agree. And that's a very basic way to put it, but Walker Buehler, injury riddled. This is a guy who I've always wanted the Mets to go after. I feel like he would be a good fit in New York. I would be big. Corbin Burns, I feel like every team wants Corbin Burns. Let's start with him, Finn. Where do we predict Corbin Burns will end up?
I think new ownership will make a statement and end up signing him back.
I don't know how we've done this, Finn, but 3 for 3 in aligning here. I feel like all the signs are pointing to him going back to Baltimore. Their roster's relatively inexpensive right now. I feel like they are going to pay up for Corbin Burns. How big of a deal do we expect Corbin Burns to garner here?
My guess is like a 6 or 7 year deal with an average annual value of like 30.
Yeah. So 180 over 6, which is basically what Cole just re-signed for with the Yankees. I would generally agree here with Corbin Burns going back to Baltimore on something like that. Bueller, Bieber, the other name Snell. What do we see with these guys, Finn? Let's start with Snell.
Snell, I have going back to San Diego,
Okay.
who needs to replace Joe Musgrove, who had Tommy John.
Okay. I do like it. I like Snell on a team that I think is going to really be spending a little bit more than they normally do, at least. And they just made the playoffs. I kind of like Blake Snell going to Detroit. and maybe this might be out of left field here, but I think they've picked up some stuff for sorry, not some stuff, but some attention to get Corbin Burns. I feel like right now is a good time for Detroit to really buy, and I feel like they'll really like Blake Snell over there. Um, that's my general consensus. They like the hard slider guys. Um, Snell maybe doesn't exactly mirror Tarek Screwball, but I feel like they could have similar success with Snell to what they just did with Screwball. And then similarly with Snell, previously he had been a guy who kind of struggled with the long ball a little bit. You're not going to have that problem in Comerica. I like Snell in Detroit. Um,
I definitely see them as a dark horse. It's just whether or not they are willing to go out and spend money.
I'll say this: I feel like they will. Um, I maybe don't know how expensive Snell's going to be. Um, if I had to guess, he will probably range between 25 to 28 million over around a 6-year deal. And I feel like that's not too crazy for Detroit to do because Detroit in the past has been a spender, right? They haven't been very good, so they haven't been spending. But I feel like now that they've made the playoffs, I feel like they might be a little bit more of spenders, similarly to how they were in the early 2010s. Um,
We know how that worked.
mhm. Didn't work very well, but hopefully this will be a new era in Detroit here. I'm going to, with my next player, I'm going to be very similar to what you just said with Snell going to San Diego. I think if San Diego is trying to replace Musgrove, they're going to get a guy who's not going to want to sign, uh, you know, a long year deal because they're going to want to hit the market again. I think Shane Bieber is a great fit in San Diego. He gets to he's coming off of Tommy John surgery, right? This is a guy who wants to get paid big bucks. How about he signs a 1-year deal in San Diego, goes to a great pitcher's ballpark on a playoff contending team, and tries to really have a good season before he hits the open market again next year. And it would be a good fit for San Diego because they wouldn't have to dish out as much money as they would to Blake Snell or uh, Walker Buehler or maybe not even Buehler, but to Blake Snell or Corbin Burns, right? And you could still get that top of the market value whilst, not having to pay for it and not having the risk of, hey, we're going to have to pay this guy a ton of money later down the line when we'll have guys coming back in the rotation. How do you feel about that for Shane Bieber?
That's exactly what I thought Detroit would try to do. Get a good starting pitcher that they don't have to commit that much money to. Long term, anyways.
Mm-hmm. And, right, similar
That said,
things.
I think they would lose out to a contender.
And I was going to say a team that's done very similar things in the past couple years has been the Mets. They basically did it 6 times this past year on starting pitching. I feel like they could be in the market for Shane Bieber on relatively cheap money compared to what he's probably worth. Let's go to another, or we didn't say Walker Buehler, Finn. Where do we think Walker Buehler will end up?
I think he'll end up going to the Dodgers at a short term deal.
Okay.
I still think he kind of has to prove health wise he is worthy of that long term deal.
Yeah, I could see that. Let me throw this one out there. A guy who's really seen regression in his fastball the past couple seasons. What if there's a team that has almost eradicated using fastballs in their entire organization and has really taken a step forward in pitching development the past couple of years. And that's the Boston Red Sox. What if they go to Walker Buehler and say, hey, we can fix your fastball up a little bit. We can add a little sinker in there. We can really prioritize your slider and your curveball. And we can get you pitching back at, top level starting pitching. I really like Walker Buehler to Boston as a prediction. Probably on a multi-year deal, but there's probably some way for Buehler to get out of that if he wants to. I like Buehler to Boston. I feel like that's a good player to team fit. The next, because I feel like this guy who I'm about to say should have been included in this grouping. Max Fried, Finn. How do you feel about Max Fried?
Max Fried, the Braves don't do this often, but I feel like they need to. They need to pay up.
Mm-hmm. I feel very similarly. I feel like there's been some noise about Fried wanting to go west, which I'm not sure how much I buy that. I would assume he wants to probably stay on the Braves just because they're going to be a really good team. But
I think he's trying to prove to the Braves that a team like the Giants will pay up.
Mm-hmm. And I think San Francisco would, but I feel like the Braves would probably not overpay, but they would pay more than San Francisco. This is a guy you need to keep. That's how I feel about Max Fried. We talked so much about how good the Braves pitching was all season. Well, you look at it, Reynaldo Lopez had a 4+ expected ERA last year. Chris Sale gave you 29 great starts. Are you going to get the 2.0 ERA from Reynaldo Lopez again? Are you going to get 29 starts from Chris Sale again? Is Strider going to even come back healthy, right? Charlie Morton probably over the hill now. You need to bring back Max Fried, I think. I think it would be a real miss if they don't. I think I ultimately see him going back to the Braves, which is why I didn't bring him up in those other 4 names just then. You got anything?
He's gonna go back.
Yeah, Max Fried as well. Like he could also be a really good fit in San Diego. Right? Like I don't think that he only fits in Atlanta, but I feel like this is the time for them to pay up. Let's talk about some hitters now.
I always feel like if they don't pay a pitcher, they will not contend.
I agree because man, I don't know what devil magic y'all have. It's like they sacrificed their starting lineup's health to have a healthy Chris Sale this year. Like I don't know what's gonna happen. You got to bring back Max Fried. And like what? It's gonna be $27 million a year. Like Max Fried's had his own health concerns, right? He's not gonna cost that much money. And what's the point of having all these young players on good value contracts if you're not willing to then pay to keep the team good? Right? We're hanging up the wrong trophies here, if that's the case. It's an issue to me. You ready to talk some bats, though?
Yep.
We've already mentioned Soto. 3 of the more premier ones for me, Pete Alonso, Anthony Santander, Juan Soto, and then we'll include Willy Adames in this as well. I feel like those are the 4 really big bats on the free agent market, Finn. Out of all these guys, who do you think is going to get the most money?
Soto.
All right, between Alonso, Adames, Santander, and Bregman, who do we think is going to get the most money?
I'm gonna go with Adames.
That is my pick as well. I
Yeah,
think
because
Adam
out of all those, he's the one that plays the premier defensive position well.
and that as well as I feel like Adamas is probably going to get paid a lot more than people uh are going to think he's worth. Um, I think that is going to be a deal that really, when it's signed, is going to cause some uproar. Um, I do think Adamas is going to get the most out of all of those guys.
That people just don't recognize the value of a great defensive shortstop that can hit well.
Not just hit well, like he hits for really good power. Um, I really Adamas is going to get a ton of money. Finn, where do we see Adamas's location probably ending up?
LA or Atlanta.
Okay, for me, I like Atlanta as a fit. If I didn't also think they were going to re-sign Max Fried, my two fits for Willie Adamas are the Dodgers, of course, and the Giants. I really like him in San Francisco. Um, I'd have, a little bit of concern with the bigger ballpark in San Francisco, but the Dodgers are also a pretty big ballpark, right? Last year, San Francisco had a carousel at shortstop. I feel like bringing in a guy like Willie Adames uh, will be a stabilizing force for them. And I think Buster Posey, who's now running the show up there, really, he knows this, right? I think Willie Adames to San Francisco is my pick. If I had to guess, uh, it'll be it'll be close to 30 a year. I don't think it'll quite be at that number. Maybe it's 27 over 6. That'll put him at not sure the number there. um, we're baseball people. We're not math people. Uh, what would 27 over 6 be, Fit? One, one,
180, 171. Believe.
one. I got 162. Wait,
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
yeah, 162 over 6 for Willie Adames. I feel like that's about the range I see him in. Uh, yeah. Do you have any other teams for Willie?
I see the Mets have made an offer. I just don't see him taking that. I just don't see him wanting to leave shortstop.
Okay, yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
and I don't think that the Mets will be willing to pay as much as the Dodgers and Giants, especially after we have them signing a Juan Soto, potentially signing a Shane Bieber.
Yeah, I feel like Adames. If the Mets are really hard pursuing Adames, for me that brings up a lot more concerns about Lindor's long-term health. Um, I feel like just the principle of signing him to move him to third base, I don't think it really fits. I feel like it was just like, hey, this is something that we're going to at least throw out there. If it works at the right price, we'll do it. I think teams are going to sign him for a lot more money with the idea of him playing shortstop.
I
Um,
also feel like a good bit of his value is him playing shortstop.
I agree. Um, I don't. It doesn't make much sense to me to sign Willie Adames for the Mets. Um, there's no other teams that I really like to link him to. Detroit, I'll throw that out there. They had some success with Trey Sweeney last year. With Detroit, I really concern. My main concern is the ballpark stuff. Um, other than that, how do we? Any other Willie stuff, or we'll go to Pete or Santander or somebody.
Not really. In the end, I have the Dodgers outbidding.
That's fair. All right. Pete Alonso. Destinations for him. What do we have?
Yankees, Cubs, Mariners, Astros.
Okay.
Mets if they don't sign Soto.
I agree. I like a lot of those teams. Mariners are interesting because nobody wants to go there. But their ballpark doesn't play big necessarily. It's just I'm pretty sure it's a visibility thing. The ball's really hard to pick up there. I do like Pete Alonso going there. Their offense was dreadful last year. This guy's a walking 40 home runs, 100 RBIs. That's going to really help them.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned that. Yes, their offense was dreadful. I think they're going to need to spend money on it if they don't want to end up having the exact same thing that happened to them this year happen again.
I agree. It's Pete Alonso going there is good. They're a team that hasn't necessarily spent much in the past, but I feel like they have a really good roster, and doing it right now on Pete Alonso wouldn't be horrible for them. Another team that I think is interesting is Washington. I feel like they would be a pretty solid fit for Pete Alonso. Um, this guy brings a ton of power. I like that you brought up Houston, because that'll, you know, have something to do with Bregman as well. I feel like Bregman's an important piece, and Alonso going if he were to go to Houston. Chicago, ultimately, I could see them as one of the favorites for Pete. At the end of the day, I think I do like the Seattle one. Although if I had to really throw my prediction out there, I feel like he goes to the Yankees.
I agree. I just don't think that one, I don't think he's going to want to go to Seattle. Two, I think the Yankees are going to have a bid in between those two teams.
I agree. Just it doesn't. There, I feel like Seattle does have the second strongest scenario for me, at least in teams that would really pursue Pete Alonso.
I think the Astros will because of something I'm not going to say quite yet.
Is it Bregman?
Yes.
All right, let me hear what you have on Bregman then.
I have him reuniting with AJ Hinch on the Tigers.
Okay, yeah, I like that. I have a question then. What position is he playing? Is he sticking at third for you?
He's sticking at third for me, yes. I
Okay.
just don't think he'd be good enough defensively to play short. And
Okay,
I
yeah.
feel like, at first, Torque is the worst defender out of the two of them.
Yeah, and it's been said coming from Bregman that he's willing to move to second base for some teams, which I just don't see the team that really makes a big difference for, right? I feel like a lot of the teams that are going to pursue Bregman are going to pursue him because he's the best third baseman available. For me, the two teams that I could see Bregman going to realistically are the Yankees and the Astros. I feel like he's a great fit for the Yankees. He'll play third base. They'll move Chisholm to third or to second base or center field if they want to
Where
be
he
smart.
belongs.
Where he belongs, yeah, you move him back to his natural position. Um, it would really make a lot of sense, especially if you're losing Soto, because then you have an outfield spot open. I feel like Bregman will really play well in Yankee Stadium. I feel like it's a great fit there with him. Bregman to the Yankees, I like it, and if the Astros are going to pay up, they could easily bring him back. It's just I don't know if they will. They have a ton of money tied up to their current roster. I don't know. I feel like I could go either way with Houston or the Yankees for Alex Bregman. What other teams are there, or what other players are there? Let's go. Anthony Santander. where do we feel like Santander will go? Um,
This is just a quick list of teams: Yankees,
mhm.
Mariners, Nationals, Royals, Orioles. Those are my top five.
Okay. Can I say my couple teams that I really like? So the Dodgers have to spend money somewhere. I haven't predicted them to sign anybody big. They're going to be losing Teo, more likely than not. Um, Santander would go there. He would fill in fine. It's been announced that Mookie Betts is going to play the infield next year. I would assume Santander will play right field for the Dodgers next year, if that's the case. If he goes there, that is. Um, really good defensive team last year. Milwaukee, they're going to be losing Willie Adames. I think they're perfectly fine replacing a shortstop defense with either Turang, who just won the Platinum Glove, or Joey Ortiz, who was amazing defensively at third base last year. I think they're going to figure out the infield stuff. I feel like they will want the impact bat that they just lost with Willie Adames, and I feel like Santander is a place they could spend some of that money on. Um, I feel like he's out of Baltimore. I haven't seen too much reporting confirming that. I feel like if they're bringing back Burns, though, I feel like there's no way they bring back both of those guys. And then a team that I really like for him, that I think is kind of under the radar, for similar reasons to me liking Milwaukee, is I think Cleveland is actually a really good fit for him. Um, they're going to want that big bat in the lineup, and they don't have sneakily a lot of holes to fill over there in Cleveland. Just getting another really good bat in the middle of that lineup is really important, and I feel like Cleveland could pay up. If I had to predict a team, um, I'm split between the Dodgers and the Brewers. So make that for what you will. Um, yeah. Any Santander opinions here?
I think he goes to the Yankees, who lose out on Soto and don't get Bregman.
Okay, yeah, I could see that for sure. If they don't bring in another bat, then I feel like Santander is a good fit for them. It doesn't bring much for them defensively because then he has to play right field, and then Judge still has to play center field. Um, it feels like we're just running in circles here. Um, either way, I agree. Um, let's go to some of the more under the radar free agents. Christian Walker Finn, where do we really like him going? Can I
Christian
say my name?
Walker,
Okay.
Seattle.
Seattle. I feel like him and Pete Alonso have a lot of the similar contender or teams to fill out. I like him a lot more to Houston because Houston they don't have to spend the big bucks that they do on Pete Alonso. Um, Christian Walker is at least a little bit older, right? 'Cause that's why they don't have to spend the big bucks. He will definitely match the timeline that Altuve's on. And I feel like he'll be a really great fit in Houston, offensively hitting into the short porch. Um, and I feel like he would go there regardless of if they bring back Bregman or not. I feel like that's a really good location for him. Um, yeah, Astros, Yankees, Seattle, the Cubs, right? A lot of these teams are very similar. Other names, Nate Eovaldi, Finn. Where do we like Nate Eovaldi going to?
I think he goes to the Giants.
I do like that. Um, they've had a lot of luck rejuvenating starting pitchers in the past, at least at higher ages. I really do like Nate Eovaldi going there. I like him maybe getting a chance with the Mets. I feel like that would be a great chance for them to take on a experienced starting pitcher.
See how
I
he
do,
does under Jeremy Hefner?
yeah, for sure. And they've had, good bit of success with some guys, uh, developing pitching and bouncing back over the past couple years. Um, Another starting pitcher name, Yusei Kikuchi. Um, Basically anywhere, Finn. I mean, I feel like anybody would like this guy as a 3-4 starter for them. Just had a really good second half. In Houston, I feel like any place that plays pretty good for fly ball pitchers is a good fit for Yusei Kikuchi.
I feel like Houston will sign him back.
I do think there's some truth to that, unless they spend huge money elsewhere. Houston does have the pitching depth to lose a guy like this. Um, Interestingly enough, I think he would be really fun in Kansas City. I feel like they could make a move for some pitching. I feel like Detroit, if they don't bring in any of the bigger guys, I feel like Detroit could get him. I feel like Kikuchi's a really great option for a lot of teams that don't necessarily have the high-end budgetary ability that some of the bigger markets do. I think the last big position player for me, or last two big position players for me, three, I lied. Hassan Kim, Gleyber Torres, and Teoscar Hernandez. Was any big strong feelings about any of these guys going anywhere?
Teoscar, I think it goes to Houston. They get Jordan Alvarez's bad defense out of the outfield. He goes and plays first base.
I think that's actually a pretty good fit there. I like it. Pretty good.
And is
I
Jordan
think it's fun.
Alvarez actually someone you can see playing first base?
You look at him, Finn. He's huge. Like, they make it work with him in left field just because of how small it is in Houston in left field. For similar reasons, I like Teoscar Hernandez going to Boston. You look at what Boston has coming at least forward, right? Jaron Duran, Tristan Casas, Rafael Devers, Marcelo Meyer, Roman Anthony, Kyle Teal. Some of these guys aren't on the big leagues. Wheeler Abreu is going to get Rookie of the Year votes. So many left-handed batters. They have Tyler O'Neill there to kind of give them some righty balance. I think they should bring him back, obviously. I think Teoscar Hernandez is another really important righty to get into that lineup to give you some type of balance. I like Teoscar going to Boston a little bit. Although I do like him a lot in Houston too, because I feel like he would really love that short porch. No way he goes back to Seattle with the year that he had there, an walk year. I could see him going back to the Dodgers if they miss out
I
on a
feel
couple
like
guys.
Seattle would have to pay them $1 million.
Yeah, Seattle is really at a disadvantage with a lot of hitters, especially hitters who don't think that it's their last big payday, which is why I do like Christian Walker there because he's already 34 years old, right? Like, he's probably not going to hit the market again in his career as a super relevant player. So going to Seattle might be his last big payday. Either way, a couple other names. I'd mentioned Hassan Kim. I feel like this is a guy who is going to get paid a lot because he's very good. And I do like him. I had predicted Adames going to either the Dodgers or the Giants. I could see Hassan Kim going to whichever team doesn't sign Willie Adames between those two guys. I do like either of those teams getting Hassan Kim.
I could also see the Braves being a dark horse.
I agree. They
But
have
I
their
don't
own
give
Javi
on to the
Baez.
Giants off of it.
Yeah. the Braves have their own Javi Baez in Orlando Arcia. So bringing in Ha-Seong Kim could be very good for them. All that I really have left here, important relievers, Clay Holmes, Tanner Scott. There's more. There's always more
Blake
relievers.
Trinan,
Blake
Trevor
Trinan,
Hoffman.
Trevor Hoffman. These are a little less specific. I feel like a lot of contenders are obviously going to want basically any of these guys. And I mean, we can discuss Tyler O'Neill too if we think that. I just always thought he was going to go back to Boston. That's how I felt about Tyler O'Neill.
I
What do you
agree.
think?
That's just a great fit.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel
Like
like if Boston's going to contend, they cannot lose a bat of that caliber.
that right now is the only type of right-handed power that they have as well, or right-handed production, let alone. I feel like Tyler O'Neill going back to Boston is like almost. I'm very certain on it. If not, it's going to be because they got somebody else. And another team is going to really pay for Tyler O'Neill. I would love Tyler O'Neill on the Mets. Do you have any other free agent names before we move to any big trades that we think might happen?
I don't.
Finn, what big trade candidates do you see moving this offseason?
Garrett Crochet, Mason Miller.
Okay. I generally agree with you.
Maybe even Lou Rob.
Luis Robert's interesting. If Robert had had a good season this past year, I feel like he would definitely get traded. But I feel like the White Sox aren't going to want to trade him right now because I feel like his value is at an all-time low. And I feel like it could easily be rejuvenated with the first half that is solid. And let's say he does go to shit, they can get out of his money instantly after the 2025 season. I feel like Robert, if he's going to get moved, it's going to be next deadline. Garrett Crochet, I really like as a trade candidate. I feel like he will definitely move. Where do we think a guy like him is going to go?
A guy like who?
Crochet.
Mets, Phillies, Braves.
Anywhere
I could
that's not
see
going to
Yankees
trade.
in there.
Yeah. Anywhere that's not going to sign their pitching. The Dodgers, obviously, like all of the contenders are going to want Garrett Crochet. And maybe not all of those teams have the facilities to get a Garrett Crochet. I think Philly definitely does. I think the Mets probably do. I don't think the Yankees or the Braves do.
I think the Yankees do, but I don't think they want to give up what it would take.
I don't think so either. I think the
Like,
roster's
the
aging a little
big
bit.
name of Jason Dominguez would have to be in that trade.
Yeah, and I don't see them parting ways with Jason Dominguez. I don't see it happening. How do we feel about the potential trade of Carlos Correa?
I don't see it. I
Okay.
just don't think he's had good enough years to justify a team wanting to trade for that contract.
Yeah. I mean, I would assume that the Twins would have some type of uh, covering of the deal. Put
And
it
I
this
don't
way.
think they would get the value they would want to get to take a trade.
Yeah. Put it this way. When he was healthy this season, he was certainly worth the money he was paid. But he only played 86 games. Um, I think
He's more of
Correa's.
a deadline candidate if we see a healthy first half, like the Twins are doing bad.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Really, any huge contender would really like Carlos Correa. I think I've seen early Giants talk for Carlos Correa, which I don't know. I feel like they would just spend on their own free agents, pull a move for Carlos Correa. Uh, we'll see. Maybe the Dodgers trade for him because why wouldn't they? And they pay the whole contract because they can. Um, Other names. There are other players that could get traded. Um, you had mentioned Mason Miller. What teams do we think? I mean, it's going to be a big group of the same names, right? That are going to want Mason Miller. What do you think would be the Oakland A's demand for Mason Miller? And do you think the A's should trade Mason Miller?
I think their demand for him would be top closer value. Kind of like the value that the Rays got for a Jason Adam, or the Marlins got for a Tanner Scott.
I 100% agree with you. If teams are not sending you that, I don't see why you don't take it if you're Oakland. I feel like a lot of the reason that they've been criticized for not moving off of Mason Miller this past deadline. One, because he was hurt during the deadline, but two, because I think they still see some starter upside with him. And I feel like that's why they wanted to hold on to him. And they think that in the next 5 years, they can tap into that and hopefully be a competitive team in the next 5 years. Because, people are going to say, oh, y'all are going to suck forever. And this doesn't matter if you have a closer. But, things
And
can
they
really turn
will
around.
if they don't spend money.
That's not necessarily true. Okay?
Like, I mean, even the Tampa Bay Rays, when they were good, spent a little bit of money.
They really didn't, though. I mean, they paid for Charlie Morton. You really don't have to spend that much money to be a great team. Look at Milwaukee this past season, right?
Even they have contracts on their books. Yelich, when he was healthy, was a contributor.
Yeah. So obviously, yeah, they paid to retain an MVP candidate. Oakland, they don't have any MVP candidates to retain on their books here. So sure, you can argue they should spend more money, but if you're a small market team, you have to spend the money the right way. And I feel like that's what gets lost a lot here. For
I
me,
don't
if
think
I'm
they should spend money, but I'm saying that if they don't, they won't. They can't expect to contend.
I feel like this is definitely a debate for its own episode. Maybe this will be a Let's Argue episode, Finn. We'll see. Shoot, maybe it's next week episode. We're not sure what next week episode is going to be. um, but yeah, I mean, if I'm Oakland, I'm hanging up the phone unless I get what I think is the best reliever trade of all time. You look back at trade history, right? Trading away your relievers is the right move. I think the reason they haven't traded Mason Miller already is because they think he could be a starter. We'll
I
see if
don't.
that's the truth. I'm concerned about injuries with him. He really had never been healthy as a starter.
Plus, a good bit of what makes him good is that very high velocity fastball, which you're not going to be able to maintain as a
No, you're
starter.
not. I agree. Cardinals have guys. Who do we
Sonny
think?
Gray.
Sonny Gray, Nolan Arenado. Do we think these guys could get moved?
Sonny Gray, yes. Nolan Arenado, no. Actually,
I'm
Arenado, I think you could get moved if the Cardinals are willing to pay like half of the contract and not get that much back for him.
Mhm. Let's say this, Finn. Nolan Arenado this next upcoming season is owed $32 million. Following that, it's $17 million and $15 million. Knowing that, are you a little more willing to take on an Arenado contract?
Yes, I thought it was 32 straight for all three.
No, it's $32 million, and then it gets a lot better the next 2 seasons. I would assume if the Cardinals are going to cover any money for you, they would cover money on 2025. So that's how I would interpret or Arenado's an Arenado trade. Who do we think could be great fits for Arenado?
Yankees.
It's always the Yankees. Let me throw 2 teams that maybe people, or 3 teams that I think people won't necessarily immediately jump to. Okay? Young team, doesn't have really anything tied up financially except their superstar. They just made a huge, had a really good season. How do we feel about Kansas City if they were to trade for Nolan Arenado?
I do think that would be a good fit, but the question is, how much are the Cardinals gonna want?
For me, I think it's not going to be very much, right?
Like, I don't think he's gonna be movable if they want all-star third baseman value.
Which here's the thing, Finn. Has Arenado been an all-star third baseman for the past couple seasons?
No.
The past 2 years, he just hasn't been that, right? I think that Kansas City could really like him. I think Detroit, he would be a pretty interesting fit there. Um, if you are concerned about those being some bigger ballparks, Philadelphia, Arenado matches their timeline. There's really not going to be a better opportunity for them to really make a big splash. How do we feel about Philadelphia potentially making some type of a move for Nolan Arenado?
I don't think that's a necessarily a bad idea, but I'm struggling to think of where he would play.
I mean, why are we not just slotting him in at third base?
Didn't Bohm play there and have a pretty decent season?
Do you remember what happened when the Phillies faced elimination against the Mets, Finn? Do you know who wasn't in the lineup?
Bohm.
And due to his poor performance the whole second half, him not really ever really being that great of a hitter in his career, I don't know. I don't feel like Alec Bohm's like if you're the Cardinals, are you not just accepting Alec Bohm for Arenado straight up?
Yeah, you would. That I could see the Phillies doing.
Right. I feel like it makes a lot of sense for both teams. Alec Bohm, let's say you're St. Louis and you want to get back a real player for Arenado. Uh, he's a lot cheaper, right? You could probably figure out some type of extension for him if you want to keep him long term. Um, and he's fine, right? And I feel like Philly would definitely want to do that because it probably is an upgrade right now to bring in Arenado over Bohm. Um, and they would take that huge, that huge money commitment over the next couple seasons. Really, just this next season. After that, it's not too bad. Sonny Gray. I think everybody should call about Sonny Gray. Nothing else to it. I think everybody should call about Sonny Gray. He's a really good starting pitcher. He's older, so he, he's
But
not on
it's
a
not like
contract for
he's
very long.
on that long of a deal. I'm pretty sure it's just 2025 and 2026.
Yeah, like you're gonna whatever, right? If the first year goes bad, hey, you're only tied to him for one more year, to which you could probably get out of a good bit of it. Um, Everybody should call about Sonny Gray. Ryan Helsley, Finn. I feel like it's the same thing as all the relief pitcher free agents. Like everybody probably is in the market for Ryan Helsley. Um, it seems like we're really targeting the Cardinals right now. Wilson Contreras. Um, Apparently, the Cardinals are trading everybody. Um,
I mean, I wouldn't blame them if they did. This past season, it showed them they needed to tear down.
it hasn't been very promising, to say the least. Looks like it's the end of an era that I can't really point to where the era began. But apparently it did begin at some point. So, uh, let's see. Any other big name trade candidates that we have? Jake Burger.
Wilson Contreras, I'm trying to think of a contender that needs a catcher. Maybe Kansas City. You can move Salvi. Maybe have him DH.
I do
I'd
like
have a
that.
big defensive burden on the plate.
Kansas City takes on Arenado and Wilson Contreras. We're getting somewhere with this. I don't know. Maybe every Royals fan ever is telling us no. Um,
That would be
I
if Nolan Arenado went to the Phillies in that bone deal.
yeah, I could see it. Moving Salvi to DH, yeah, since he's been doing it half the time anyway, the past 4 years. Uh, Not necessarily. That's obviously an exaggeration. But, let's see. I mentioned Jake Burger there for a second. I feel like this could be a Seattle guy. I feel like Seattle's targeted a lot of guys like Jesse Winker, like Eugenio Suarez, like Teoscar Hernandez, right? They've targeted guys in this type of namesake. Um, in the past, I feel like Jake Burger could really fit in there. And I feel like if Christian Walker leaves in free agency, I feel like Jake Burger's a really good Arizona fit. If Miami were to want to get another huge package from Arizona again, like they did at the deadline.
Another player at Miami I could see being traded. No, not really, because he hasn't been healthy. I was thinking of Sandy Alcantara, but he needs to prove that he's healthy.
I don't think so necessarily. He's missed basically just one season, and it was because of a Tommy John. I feel like if it was constant nagging back injuries, I would have a little bit more concerns.
I feel like his value goes up a lot if he goes out and has a good first half.
Yeah, and since he is getting paid, like he's not going anywhere free agent wise. Miami doesn't have too much incentive to move him right now. I could see that. Here's an interesting name that has come up in trade talks. Who you probably wouldn't think is in line to get traded because he's won 3 straight batting titles. Padres might want to move off of Luis Arias. Um, where could we see Luis Arias going to?
Seattle.
Seems like we're linking every hired bat to Seattle. Um,
I'm also saying that because he's a contact hitter, so he shouldn't really be that affected by the ballpark's inability to hit home runs.
that would be true if that was the problem with Seattle, though, Finn. The problem with Seattle isn't the aptitude to home runs; it's like hard to see the ball there. I think the theory is because the batter's eye is slanted. Um, that it really just makes it really hard to hit there. Um, Luis Arias, I do kind of like him in Seattle though. especially with them declining Jorge Polanco. I feel like they could figure something out. They generally haven't had a lot at first base going on. The Yankees, I feel like, should definitely call about Luis Arias, with them probably not going to have Rizzo. They're going to probably lose Gleyber Torres, right? Like, bringing in Luis Arias there does really help them. We didn't talk about Gleyber Torres. Where do we like Gleyber Torres, Finn? I think this is our final name, probably, before we wrap this one up. So, Gleyber. The one player who I feel no strong way about. Do we think Gleyber Torres goes to Tampa Bay and wins an MVP? Could this happen? Tampa Bay figures out something with his swing. I don't know. I
Going to Tampa Bay, yes. Winning an MVP, probably not.
Yeah, that was an exaggeration. I kind of like him in Tampa. I like him in Seattle for Gleyber. I feel like go ahead, get paid in Seattle. They'll probably pay him a good bit of money. Those are good fits for Gleyber Torres. I still like him in a place like Detroit or Kansas City, who can't operate at the top of the market, but they could bring in a guy like Gleyber Torres for sure. A lot of good stuff. Hey, maybe he works in Boston too. Just throw it out there, even though they have a lot of middle infield depth. Any other closing comments here, Finn? Do we think Mike Trout's getting traded?
I don't.
Yeah, I don't either. All right.
He needs to stay healthy consistently for at least a season.
I agree. Yeah, I feel like this should be a good offseason. I feel like there's going to be a lot of movement. I feel like Roki Sasaki will go to the Dodgers and everybody will say the league is rigged. Hopefully a lot of player movement. Hopefully the Mets come out winners of the offseason, and hopefully that winning the offseason banner correlates to September success, unlike prior New York offseason. So yeah, that'll wrap this one up. Following this episode, this should be going out on Wednesday the 13th. Following this on Saturday the 16th, there will be an NBA episode between me and Sheldon. And then next Wednesday, there will be an MLB episode. The topic will be a surprise for now. But we will see you then on normal schedule.